In this lesson, we will continue to talk about FREECAD draft interface. And just one thing I want to show you, when you start FREECAD and you are on a welcome screen like I'm doing right now, so this is the start screen or welcome screen, you can open up from down here the first configuration. For example, right now, this is in Italian, so I can change this into English. And then I can change also the units. So we saw that we can change the units from edit and preferences, but we can also do it from here directly. So the standard are millimeters, but you find also others like inches or centimeters or meters. So I will use millimeters, and I can choose also here the navigation style. I'm gonna keep in Blender and the dark or bright interface, which I'm gonna keep the free dark. So you can always enter here by clicking down here, open first start setup, and you can change anytime these settings. So I just restarted FreeCAD to change also here because the text was still displayed in Italian, so now it's in English. And let's get into the 2D draft workbench. So we saw previously that we can create 2D shapes and we can also create text and we can use snaps to work more precisely. So in this video, we will continue to explore this workbench and see what other tools we have at our disposal. So actually, I want to do something different. I want to close this. I don't want to start with a new draft, but I want to use here in the examples the draft text objects that you can see here. So let's open up this. And here you find some examples of anything you can do in the draft workbench. So for example, these are all the tools you have here, like mirroring tool and clone to copy. And then you have shape 2D view, which is really interesting. I'm gonna do some demonstration, just a minute. And then you have examples of layers. So if you're interested in something, let's say I wanna know more about the layer part. So if I select this object, I can see here in the model panel the part concerning the layers. So this is, you see layers, and then inside the layers I have a custom layer, and then inside I have two shapes, two 3D solids, etc., etc. So you have arrays, you have polar array. So these are like to create multiple copies, and again, different examples. And then the annotation. So you have the text, you have the mentioning, like radial or linear or angular, and also label example. And then you have the simple line or the wire. Now wire in we saw that it means like to create 2D shapes or 2D lines in FreeCAD. And then we have fillets example and arcs, and then closed shapes like this, curves. And Facebinder, it's another tool we're gonna see, is essentially to extract faces from and surfaces from a 3D object. And then we have texting, sorry, shape string, which create text that can be manipulated as surfaces, so it can be extruded, for example. And then a hatch, which is kind of a pattern that we can add to a surface. And that's basically it. So let's get started and see some of these tools. And I don't know if we're gonna see everything, but again, if you're interested, you can just select something here and see what is that and how it's done. And these are all annotations, by the way, so these are all texts. And so if you can just discover yourself more. Now I want to use this wire right here, which is composed by two lines that are connected. And you can see here I can turn it on and off. And sometimes you have tasks. Now the tasks here are to create the shapes, which we did before in the previous video. So we're gonna make some more examples, but I want to start from here. So if I select this wire, so this is a couple of lines, we have some information here, and these are like parameters that you can change and you can edit anytime. So this is why we call this like parametric drawing or parametric modeling, and etc., because we can just go back and forward in the parameters and change the result anytime. Now we also have another important panel, which is right here, and it's the view panel, but this is more like how to visualize things, but I'm gonna talk about later. I'm gonna go in the data here. And the first thing I want to show you is that a wire, to be considered like a surface, it needs to be closed. It needs to be like something that starts from a point and ends on that exact point. So it's like a cycle, a loop. So if we go here in the parameters, you can see that there is a parameter here called closed and it's false. Now, if we click here, we can change that and make it true. So if we click back in the screen, it's going to finish the shape, and we can see that this is actually a triangle now, and it's a closed shape, a closed wire. So it creates a surface that then can be manipulated in 3D. So the bottom line is anything you do in 2D can be used for 3D or vice versa. If you can create a 3D object and create 2D shapes, 2D drawings from that 3D object like this. If we select this, you can see that this was before a box. So it was before a solid, and then from that solid, this kind of 2D fake 3D, let's say, has been created. We can see if we orbit around, this is flat. So it's how we would draw a 3D shape on a paper. So it's flat, but it's representing a 3D object. It came from a 3D object. So you can create 2D from 3D and 3D from 2D. That's the concept. So let's go here back in this. And well, to create a 3D, we can use different tools. For example, if we go in the part workbench, we can use the extrude command or part extrude. And here we need to set up some settings. So along normal means that it is going to go on like a perpendicular arrow going up. So if I just specify the length, so let's try with let's say 100 millimeters. So it's going to be like 10 centimeters. Let's apply. Okay, so you can see now this is the extrusion. Other ways we can choose the custom direction, so we can extrude from on the X or on the epsilon or on the Z, which is more or less the same thing. Let's apply. Okay, so we turn a 2D shape into a 3D object really easily. Now the good news is that what if I change my mind on the starting shape? So if I expand here the double click, you don't want to double click, you want to click on the arrow, expand, we can still access the wire. So if we turn off the extrusion and turn on the wire, we can see the shape underneath that. I think it's this other one. So you can see the wire is still there. So if I change this, I will change also the following commands like the extrusion. So if I do something here, we talk about the fillets in the previous video. Well, we can choose to add a fillet even through the parameters right here. So if we add like, let's say 1 millimeter fillet, let's see. Yeah, it's pretty small. So let's make this bigger. Let's make 10 centimeters. There we go. So you can see it's back and forth. We can go back and forth. We can increase this like 30 maybe. Yeah, and we create a shape, and we can go back to 10 or continue to add like, let's say 50 millimeters, so like 5 centimeters. It creates a pretty different shape. But if I go back in the extrusion, so if I turn on the extrusion again, you can see the result is based on the new shape. So everything is parametric, meaning that everything is connected. So it's related to something. So if we change the source, we change also the end result. So again, here 2D and 3D are strictly related. Now, if I want to take this, I can use some other tool here. Let's go back to the draft workbench and continue with some other tool. So if you don't see everything, you can click and drag these other tools down so you can see everything at once. There you go. And I want to show you also like the move. So if I want to move this object, I can click and move it like here. And you can see that actually it just moved the extrusion, the source like remained right there. and still they will be